Hi there, welcome to Gnostic Vlog Confessio 29. And as I was clearing the fire pit for tomorrow's celebration of the Summer Solstice, which actually takes place at 11:43 p.m. British summertime, I was suddenly became aware of, in fact, that to a Grail Gnostic, if such an animal exists, of course, this celebration of summer solstice is incredibly important, and for various reasons. Just as I was thinking, just as the winter solstice is a time when they celebrate the birth of the sun and the birth of the Avatar Christ, the Anointed One, Avatar of the Transcendental God. Which is a sort of outward sign, as it were, of the Logos. At the summer solstice, we celebrate the sort of secret side or the mysterious side of the Logos. And the Logos as portrayed by the Grail itself, which is something which is hidden by a veil and has to be uncovered by the virtuous knight, the knight who accepts that all things come from God. And so, it's a mystery. And also, of course, it's when the sun begins to wane, actually, from the summer solstice onwards, whereas, of course, the winter solstice, the sun is beginning to come back, beginning to wax. So it's also a time of sadness, as well as celebration. Sadness that the sun is beginning to decline after tomorrow, and will continue to do so until you really begin to notice it around about the vernal equinox. Although sometimes after that, I suppose, really depends on the weather. And it looks like it's going to be a cold and rather dreary, rainy summer solstice in southern Ireland, anyway, which is where I am. And it's also a time of deep reflection. It's a time of healing. So healing thoughts and good wishes go out to my mother, who is 95 and who's very sick at the moment. And in fact, 3 weeks ago, the doctor said she wouldn't make it through the weekend, but she's made it. 3 weeks later, she's still with us, although she's very weak. And my brother is convinced that, in fact, she can be brought back by having a lot of hydration and homeopathy and treatments like that. So, and acupuncture even, because he's an acupuncturist. So he doesn't think that she's gone quite yet, although she's very weak. Anyway. So of course she was born in the time of the winter solstice on the 23rd of December. So if she dies over this weekend, it will sort of be a completion, to be born on the winter solstice and to die on the summer solstice. And it sort of, it kind of has as a duality to it, or a binary quality to it, which of course we will find in the lower worlds, or the finite worlds, or the worlds of the demiurge. So, the world is as it is, and we expect binary characteristics and dualistic characteristics everywhere, and we're not disappointed in that. It's also a time when you recharge crystals. You hold your crystal up to the first shard of sunlight that comes through at the dawn of solstice, which is the dawn on the Sunday in Western Europe, and and people hold their babies up to be blessed by the first sun's rays. And they go to the Tor, which is near Glastonbury in Wiltshire, England. And when people climb up to the top of the Tor and they hold their newborns to be blessed by the sun, and they also go down to the Glastonbury well, where the water runs red with the blood of the Avatar of the Transcendental God and the blood of the Goddess. So people celebrate and put their hands in the water, or even drink the water, in celebration of the summer solstice. And of course, it used to be that people will go to the obviously to the Stonehenge and celebrate, or Druids celebrate the summer solstice. It's one of the most important celebrations of the whole year. I don't know what's going to happen now with this COVID-19 crisis and pandemic. I'm not quite sure whether there aren't any festivals at the moment for sure. Not even quite sure. It'll only be a little tiny group of druids allowed to go to the Stonehenge itself because of safety reasons, really, which is all very tragic. And obods, which is the order of bards, bards, ovates, and druids, actually they've been the head druid, in fact, is a woman from Ireland, and she's taking over this year, and she's certainly going to have a work cut out this year to keep morale up amongst the Druids of Ireland and Britain and Brittany, and indeed in America, of course, where there are lots of Druids, because it's a time of great mourning and of death, and it should be a time of celebration. Although, as I said, it is mixed with with the pang of regret that the sun is waning after this period. It's a time when we celebrate or come together, supposedly. And I make the win rune here. There's a sort of we're supposed to meet up together physically and hold hands and hug each other at this time, and I must say that there is a force, a power, a principality of the air, which is preventing people from doing this on a very great scale. I mean, people can still celebrate where they can, obviously, and I will be celebrating with my partner, but we won't be having a party. We won't be having people round. No one, can travel, and there are, of course, I suppose this reminds us basically that there are forces arrayed against Gnosis in particular and Gnosticism in general, I suppose. Druidism and neo-paganism today, of course, is part of what one might call the general Gnostic movement, even though they probably would not really think themselves part of the Gnostic movement, which rejects nature and rejects matter, because of course they celebrate matter and they celebrate nature. So there's a bit of a contradiction emerges there, and within myself, of course, when I on one hand, I celebrate the cyclical changes of the year and of nature on one hand, and the power and wonder of nature, and yet on the other hand, one must reject matter and the body and the lower worlds of the demiurge on the other. So again, a strange contradiction arises, which again, binary binarism, dualism, and contradiction. Of course, the three characteristics of the lower worlds of the demiurge for sure. But we just have to kind of get over it and live with these contradictions and binary characteristics and the general dualism of matter. It isn't really that matter is evil, I suppose, but it certainly is dualistic. And the avatar, the Christ, is the avatar of the transcendental God. And of course, the blood that was caught as the avatar was dying on the cross, that the Christ was dying on the cross, of course, is kept in the Grail. It was collected in that sacred vessel, and it is metaphorically or spiritually or in some dimension, it is kept somewhere in this world with the blood of Christ in it. And some say it's actually in Glastonbury in England, and other people say it's in in somewhere near Barcelona, I think, or somewhere, or Madrid, in Spain. It doesn't really matter where it is, or even if it's physically located anywhere. The point is, it's located in our hearts, in our belief, in our paradigm, and So, it's a funny time, summer solstice. It can also be a time of conflict as well, and of sudden death. And not only with COVID-19, but one thinks of Garda Colum Hoycomb, who was killed this week in the line of duty in Ireland. And it's a reminder that the Garda, the police in Ireland, face criminals unarmed. They don't carry guns. And of course, so when a Garda is killed on the line of duty, suddenly like this, of course, it's very poignant and tragic, and Colin will, obviously will be missed by friends and family in the local area where he died. So it's a time of sudden death. It's a mixed time of joyousness, but also slight grieving, and perhaps kind of joyousness in the midst of grieving. Grieving the sun is going away again, is waning. So there's kind of, but it's also at its zenith and most powerful. So when we are at our most powerful, we are at our most vulnerable. And so, of course, the chalice represents vulnerability in the midst of the zenith of power, of solar power. So there's a secret side of solar power which is actually quite vulnerable and sentimental, and perhaps open to the forces of entropy. But certainly, this year, 2020, is a year when it seems that there are forces arrayed against the spiritually minded people of this world. And have in mind that, of course, the demiurge doesn't like too many people becoming spiritually enlightened, because this goes against his agenda of feeding off psychic negativity. And of course, there's nothing better. I suppose the taste of psychic negativity is never so sweet when it comes from people that are striving for spiritual enlightenment. Their blood must taste sweeter than people that wallow in negativity anyway. So it is a time for spiritual people everywhere not to be disheartened and dismayed and despair at what's going on, and just to say, well, this is how it goes. The world is as it is. The demiurge is who he is and what he does, and he functions as he does. And there's nothing that we can do about it except help ourselves and help each other in little groups, family groups, tribal groups. And we can try to help certain groups of people in the community and in the world, but we certainly can't change the world. We can't get rid of the demiurge. We have to put up with things as they are, for the moment anyway. So for me, I never realised actually before, how powerful the Grail symbol is at this time. And of course, the sun goes from Gemini into Cancer, and Cancer is represented by the Holy Grail. And one thinks of the charioteer carrying the Holy Grail, and the crab, the claws of the crab actually carrying the Grail as well. And there's all sorts of things about the wheel as well. The wheel turns at this time, and things will come to fruition in 4 months from now, and things like that. And there's a time of synchronicity. Synchronistic events happen. All sorts of strange, weird, and wonderful things happen at this time, of black and white, of gold and blood red, of life and death, and which we are in the midst of, obviously. I was going to say something else, but I've completely forgotten. It'll come back to me after I finish the video. So really, I mean, I have to say blessings at summer solstice, despite everything that's going on, and despite the conflict that is going on in the USA at the moment as well. It's a time of conflict, actually, summer solstice, traditionally. Strange things happen. It's also a time of sacrifice, a time of bloodshed even. So one thinks of the chalice as being symbolic of bloodletting and blood sacrifice. So, and sudden death. So, um, what can I say? Despite all these things, it is a time of celebration. It is a time of the Rune Hwyn, where we come together. If we can't come together physically, maybe, but we can come together spiritually in order to celebrate this incredibly important festival for anybody that's into Grail mysteries and into Gnosticism, or both, as I am. And obviously, there's a ton of stuff one could say about Grail mysteries at this time. I shall be listening, of course, to Richard Wagner's Parsifal opera over this weekend, one of the greatest operas ever written. And in my humble opinion, and just be spellbound by the incredible beauty of the overture to Parsifal by Richard Wagner, and generally just in wonder at the incredible music that he created in celebration of the Grail mysteries and the myth of the Fisher King. So I leave these thoughts with you, and I leave these blessings with you at this time of summer solstice. And I'm glad that this vlog entry 29 comes, a day before the solstice celebrations begin.